All living things depend on water. Even us humans cannot survive without it. Water constitutes about 70% of the earth, but it does not imply that we can take it for granted. It is known for a fact that our actions have a negative effect on our environment, especially in the bodies of water. But for us to understand the severe effects of our actions, let us first talk about the biogeochemical cycle, which involves water, the hydrologic cycle, also known as the water cycle. The water cycle is defined as the cycle of processes by which water circulates through the Earth's oceans, atmosphere, and land. This cycle is responsible for the distribution of fresh water and at the same time also responsible for our weather. The process starts from the evaporation of water from the ocean and the transpiration of water from the plant's leaves, turning from liquid to gas. Then, the water molecules condenses into tiny water droplets and ice crystals, forming clouds. Once these clouds got heavy enough wherein it can no longer float, water comes down through precipitation. Precipitation may take the form of rain, snow, or hail. Once the water reaches the ground, one of the two might occur. First, some of the water may evaporate back to the atmosphere. Second, the water would soak into the ground through a process called infiltration and become groundwater, which may seep its way to the oceans and other bodies of water, or may be stored in an aquifer. If not, water would be absorbed by the plants and trees or would simply move back into rivers, lakes, and streams in the form of surface runoff and would be carried back into the ocean. The water cycle then begins again.
We now know the complex yet amazing process of water cycle. But the question is, how does it affect the environment? Well, for one, it's a natural phenomenon. It cannot be stopped by merely manpower. In fact, if there's anything or anyone that could stop the cycle, it will be Mother Nature herself. Unless, of course, the global warming catches up and gets worse over time. Second, it's beneficial as this is how it reaches us to as humans as well as to other living organisms here on this planet. If it so happened that the water cycle stops, then there will be no clouds, no rain, no weather. It goes without saying that without the water cycle, drought, plague, great catastrophe, and disaster will emerge among us.
When one hears the word anthropogenic, it is apparent that some are not familiar with its definition. It merely means the terrifying influence on the different activities humanity inflicts on nature. Humans have always been one of the main causes on why our environment is rapidly disintegrating into a pitying condition that may forever render our planet unsavable. It has always been an ongoing battle between saving the environment and unconsciously destroying it through countless circumstances that an individual can prevent if they just simply think about what it will do to the world. We have become too blindsided to our own pleasure and devices that we forget that this is not a one-way relationship. That for us to coexist with the environment, one must uphold the proper way to keep it healthy and green. These harmful impacts done by humans to our habitat consist of many instances. The overall burning of fossil fuels, the smoke coming from automobiles and factories leading to air pollution, the dumping of chemicals or radiated materials in waterways, the act of deforestation, the throwing of trash in the ocean which leads to water pollution, and even the concept of overpopulation. All of these factors fuel the longevity of global warming, which in turn endangers the life of all living things. Nonetheless, it is quite ironic to think that we, the occupants of this planet, are one of the reasons why our Earth is being slaughtered. Now, let me ask you, do you feel even the slightest bit of regret whenever you see or hear about the severed state of this planet? Do you feel the thrumming beat in your heart that even though you did not fully take part in its inevitable demise, it is still your own kind, your own human species that has a huge role on the Earth's impending doom? Do you feel regret? Having a sense of belongingness will always be the desire of many. It is that sweet taste of companionship and having a healthy community that makes a species flourish. However, there are other breeds where instead of bringing harmony to the environment, they bring destruction and chaos. These species are called invasive species. They are living organisms that endanger a new environment because they are not native. They can arrive in a new habitat by the chemical waste from merchant ships, aquatic baits, accidental freeing of other oceanic species, and even by people. In addition, the scale of how they wreak havoc to any environment that they will be introduced to is tremendously huge. An instance would be through the means of extinctions of those native animals and plants, the modifying of habitats, and limited resources because of the competition between the native and the invasive.
Next is the Le Chatelier's principle. Humans today have been engaged in several activities which all have various impacts to the environment, specifically the water cycle. Some of activities involve creation of dams in rivers which control the amount of water upstream and reduce water downstream, and at the same time could block the path for migrating fish. Another would be making irrigation for crops, in which the water to be used for the waterways is withdrawn from its natural source. Deforestation done by humans also affects the water cycle, since trees also release water vapor that evaporates into the atmosphere, which is essential to rain. Cutting down of trees in one area reduces the amount of water vapor evaporated in the air, which would then result in less rain. In overall, these activities disturb the balance and cause change to the environment, making nature to react to these changes through ecological succession, where nature and biological life evolves in order to adapt to the occurred changes and once again attain equilibrium. This phenomenon is known as the Le Chatelier's principle, in which it describes that when a system is applied with change and disturbs the equilibrium, the system would adapt in accordance to the change applied and achieve a new state of equilibrium.
Have you heard of the movie The Parent Trap? It's about the identical twins, Annie and Hallie. They were raised in two completely different environments following their parents' divorce, and you might have noticed that they grew up to be very different. Hallie was raised in America and was portrayed to be less mature and more childish than her twin sister Annie, who was raised in London and was depicted to be more proper and more responsible. Now you might think that it must be their environments who have caused them to be so different, although there are so many more factors to that. Over the centuries, there emerged a question of what makes us, us. The social sciences argued that our environment defines who we are. On the other hand, biological sciences disputed that genes that serve as the blueprint for the body decides everything. Basically, nurture versus nature. Are we a result of our environment or our genes? So, another field of study emerged which suggests that both nature and nurture are partly correct. Let's talk about epigenetics. It means above genetics. It is the study of changes in gene function that are heritable and that are not attributed to alterations of the DNA sequence. It is the reason as to why a skin cell looks different from a brain cell or a muscle cell. These cells contain the same DNA, but their genes are expressed differently. Basically, the genes that we are born with are the genes that we have. Although, epigenetic marks are dynamic and modifiable by lifestyle choices and environmental influence. The process of epigenetic changes happens throughout our lives, and it causes the real differences in how we develop as human beings. We have discussed the multiple impacts of invasive alien species to our environment, especially on the hydrological cycle. But it is also important to recognize our own invasiveness as humans. There is an environmental principle that states that everything is connected to everything else. We greatly depend on the environment for means of survival, and we do not know when to stop taking from it. We tend to forget how we are the main threats to the earth and its resources. We must be mindful of the consequences of our own actions, or else everything else might be gone in the blink of an eye. Let it be our main duty and goal to identify the invasive species among us.
Again,
We
we
are
are
the
the
roommates.
roommates.
Thank you for watching and have a good day.